We have a PM center at the University of California, Davis, and this was addressing questions that the Air Resources Board allowed us to do that would actually look at a dose response to particles, as well as to look at a time lag to see if there was a difference based on when we looked for biological effects of aspirated particulate matter. Our objectives were to understand if there are differences in the biological response to PM collected in an urban environment versus particulate matter that was collected in a rural environment. And we wanted to be able to look at that to see if there would be a dose-response effect, that there might be a difference based on where the particulate matter was collected, as well as the effects of these particles once they were aspirated. Did the response show a persistence, or was it just a very acute short-term effect that we would measure?
So we picked two sampling sites. We wanted to compare rural emission sources to urban emission sources. So for our urban site, we chose Sacramento, downtown Sacramento. We used an existing ARB building and we sampled on the top of the roof. And for our rural site, we chose an off-campus site in South Davis that's surrounded by agricultural fields. You don't want to introduce any bias, and you want to make sure that all the preparations you are doing and all the things you are doing to this PM before you test the toxicity are not introducing bias. So that's the purpose. We want to make sure that one method is not more or less potent than the other. They should be the same.
The two different extraction methods resulted in very different platelet responses, some of which were difficult to make out because the solvent technique caused platelets to activate in the absence of physiologic agonist, which is a worry. And in the presence of physiologic agonist, the platelets weren't able to release their granules to the same extent as those treated with the solvent. The dose response was clear. The higher the dose, the more toxic the response, the more the platelets were activated. The time delay study was particularly interesting because we saw no changes in any of our parameters by flow cytometry at 24 hours or at 48 hours. And interestingly enough, we didn't see any change in the alpha granule membrane protein p-selectin at 96 hours. The only changes we saw were in the lysosomal membrane protein, which was increased in expression, indicative of activation, more so in the urban than the rural, but not by much, and the decrease in the expression of CD41, which is the platelet integrin. So the urban was more potent in our platelet portion of the study, and it is consistent with data we've published and we've seen in the literature in terms of the epidemiologic studies.
Well, an interesting conclusion was the importance of our extraction methods for collecting particulate matter from filters for biological assays. We found that using the typical extraction method of spin-down water actually provided us with a more potent effect of the particles.
So I think some of the most important questions here are why one extraction technique was so much more potent than another, and also why the composition was so much different. And finally, the most important thing is you want to be able to standardize the sample preparation techniques that you use, like again, to minimize any kind of study bias that you might introduce when you are testing this toxicologically.